I'm so excited that we are catching up with the one and only, the legend that is Anna McNuff. So Anna has been on the podcast a couple of times before to talk more about her amazing life and the different challenges that she's done, from running the Tour Road Trail in New Zealand, from racing in the Kathmandu coast to coast, and various other challenges, from cycling in Europe and cycling in the Andes. But Anna, it is amazing to have you back on the Tough Girl Podcast Extra.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely love coming to chat to you, honestly, and your whole tribe are amazing as well. So it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me back again.
Now, Anna, for those who haven't listened to the first couple of episodes and may not have heard of you, I'd love for you just to give everyone tell me just a little bit more about you and your background.
Yeah, I mean, I lead a very strange life. I basically decided that I enjoy going off and doing adventures and travels, but using my human body and no motors and stuff like that. So I've done a big cycle through America, through every state of America, run the length of New Zealand, cycled through South America. So I normally go away, do a big 6-month adventure, and then come back and talk and write books and give talks about it. And that has been effectively the last 7 years of my life now, which is crazy to think it's been that long.
Let's talk about one of your biggest challenges today, Barefoot Britain. Tell everybody just a little bit more about what Barefoot Britain is, where the idea came from, and yeah.
Oh, it's madness. Do you know what, Sarah? Because I finished it I finished in November. So that's a fair few months ago now. And it feels like this strange dream. But yes, I attempted to run the distance of 100 marathons from the Shetland Islands, right off the north coast of Scotland. And I had to Google a lot where the Shetland Islands were. And then I ended 5.5 months later in London, and I ran the most ridiculous wiggly route through Great Britain you could possibly imagine. And I did it for Girl Guiding, because I'm an ambassador for Girl Guiding. And the idea behind it was, I know it sounds mad. I fully hold my hands up and say, why on earth are you going to try and run 2,600 miles with no shoes on? But to put it in context, because I'd done all those long runs before, the whole thing that I was talking to the young girls about as I went along was, I was saying to them, girls, you've got to take on things where you feel you're in over your head, and you are just on the cusp of thinking, I can't do this, and you want to just turn and run in the other direction. And I thought, if I do a run in my trainers, because all challenges are relative, for me, it just wasn't enough of a challenge. And I thought I could probably do it. It would be ugly and messy, but I thought I could probably do it. So I just had a crazy thought of how I could make it harder. And the answer in my brain was, why don't you do it with no shoes on?
I love where your brain takes you.
Well, the thing is as well, is originally it started as I had the crazy idea that I was going to try and do about half the distance, which was 50 barefoot marathons. And then I was having coffee with my boyfriend one morning, and I the first time you verbalize your crazy challenge idea, I said, I think I'm going to try and do this run, 50 barefoot marathons. And he just took a sip of his coffee and went, I like it. And I said, but I think 100 sounds better. And that was it. I just thought, oh, gosh, I can't. I've got to do 100 now, haven't I? Thanks for that. So that's all his fault.
I mean, to be fair, it does actually sound better.
I know, that was the thing as well. And I thought, you know what, one of the main aims for the run, being completely honest, was I was trying to get Girl Guiding. They need new volunteers and they need awareness. And I thought, actually, if I do push it to 100, then you're right, it does sound better to someone in the press or whatever. So I'm always one to say, don't do things for other people. But at this point, I thought, if I'm going for it, I'm only doing this once. I'm never going to do a barefoot run ever again. Let's go all in and go massive.
So let's talk about your feet, your beautiful feet. I've seen lots of photos of them, as I know lots of people around the world have. But minimalist running, it's not something you can just go out. I presume that there was, a build up to getting your feet ready and building up the soles of your feet. Could you just share maybe a little bit more about how you prepared your feet for this? Because it wasn't just you hadn't done any training on your feet, or I hope not anyway. But yeah, talk to us a little bit more about your feet.
Yeah, and you're so right. You can't just go out and do it. And I think I definitely need to be clear that I'm not someone who runs around. I'm not like a barefoot evangelist. I suddenly learned through this run that there is this whole network and tribe of barefoot runners around the world, and they all got very excited about this. I'm not one of those kind of people. So I would, people listening to this, whatever they run in, I was just like that. I was just running around in my trainers like a normal person. And I thought, right, I think this is quite serious. But I also thought, I know that human bodies are amazing. And I know that on all the past adventures, what I've learned is that you think you know what your body can do, but you actually have no idea until you try. And so I thought, I'm pretty sure if I carefully nudge my body towards a barefoot running style and to gradually take it down to bare feet, I don't think it's going to be easy, but that's the whole point, and I think it can do it. So I think it did help that I'd spent about 3 years already in minimalist shoes, just because I like the feel of them. For me, they make me feel just my running style's a bit better, and even walking around everyday life, I just enjoy not having like support and wedges under my feet. So I think that helped. But that said, it still took me then a year and a half to transition down to running around barefoot. And that was, I did like 3 6-month phases. So I did 6 months running around in minimalist shoes. And that's like your Vivo Barefoots or your Vibrams, those kind of ones, the funny monkey shoes. And then I did 6 months in these weird Skinner socks things that are kind of, they look like a wetsuit boot, but they've got a little rubber bottom. So they're just a little bit better than being completely barefoot. And then I did 6 months completely barefoot, and I would just gradually, like on my run, I might do if I'm doing an 8-mile run, I might do 6 miles in my Skinner socks. And then for the last 2 miles, take them off completely and be running barefoot. So it was a really gradual transition over a year and a half. And most times when I went out running looking for the affirmation that I could do the adventure, and I always came back without it, because every run there was always some difficulty or new challenge, and I'd never come back from a run and think, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. I'd come back and go, okay, I still think it's possible, but this is going to be really hard. But I just kept going.
Tell us about the London Marathon, because you ended up running the London Marathon barefoot, and I believe that was the longest distance that you'd done barefoot at that point.
Yeah, good knowledge, Sarah. You know your stuff. I mean, you always know your stuff. But yeah, that was the scariest point, because I want you to imagine, like, I was starting the run in the June, and I've said to the whole world, oh, I'm going to be doing 2,600 miles with no shoes on. And then I'm stood on the start line of the London Marathon, and all right, that's one marathon I've got to run without shoes on, but it was the furthest I'd ever run without shoes on at that point in the April. So I was still a couple of months out from starting the run, and I think I'd run something like 17 miles on a beautiful bike trail, actually in Florida. I'd done it. So it wasn't difficult surface. It was very controlled. So I just thought, what on earth is going to happen on this marathon? When I stood on the start line, I thought, are my feet literally going to, blister at 17 miles in? Am I going to be in pain and have to stop? And and also standing on the start line with everyone around you, looking at your feet, questioning you and asking you whether you can do it. And you're thinking, God, I don't even know if I can do it. And suddenly I'm surrounded by all these people asking me. And so I was so nervous, because I thought this could go really wrong. But that marathon just showed me, I just remember as I got to 17 miles and I thought, right, okay, I've never gone beyond this now, and I was expecting everything to fall apart, and I was really tired. It's a marathon, your heart is hard, but I just suddenly started to feel like, I think I'm going to do this. And then I just thought, I feel pretty amazing. And I just remember the last section, that beautiful red tarmac on the Mall, and I looked down at my feet and they were just so grubby from the London streets, and I just looked up at Buckingham Palace, and I just felt this, it was such an amazing wave of, I had no idea I could do that. And that feeling of having your body's just completely surprised you. And I'd put in the hard work and I'd done the training, and suddenly my body just took over. I did what I needed to do, and I got to the finish line, and I just thought, okay, this is going to be hard, but I think it's possible to do the Barefoot Britain run.
I just want to go back to announcing it to the whole world, putting yourself out there. I'm going to do this big challenge. Running the length of Great Britain completely barefoot. You're putting it out there, and obviously people's opinions about whether is this a good idea, is this a bad idea, and what their thoughts on it. How do you deal with the outside pressure or the outside opinions from other people who maybe don't know you, don't know your mindset, don't know your background, don't know your history? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there, and I think you just have to repeatedly remind yourself, whatever you're doing, that there is no other person in the world that knows you and your body better than you do. That is a fact. And I think quite often we look to other people for that affirmation of telling us we can do something, when actually that's all going to come from within us. And of course no one knows your body better than you. Like, you have lived in it since you were born, and I think we need to remind ourselves of that, because during the lead up to the run, it was so frustrating, because I would just basically, you just sign yourself up for 6 months of anxiety, of sleepless nights, of thinking, is this going to go completely wrong? Am I about to, effectively waste 1.5 years of preparation of my life, all this energy, so much pressure I was putting on myself. The girl guiding was all relying on me and everything. And I got, as much as I got lovely messages on social media, you of course get the ones. I mean, my favourite one was from this guy who he wrote me this really long message saying, I'm a medical professional and I need to let you know that your feet are not equipped to cope with this. You have different skin to, African runners or people who might have naturally been barefoot their whole life. You've been in shoes. I just want to let you know that you're not going to do this. You're actually going to damage yourself. And I don't think it's a good idea. And I'm just trying to help you out by letting you know this. And I was so angry, because I thought I would never do that to someone else. But then from that just comes this strength. I just thought, watch me, and I don't, even if I don't do it, that's okay. And I'm still not going to feel bad about it, because I'm going to try, and whatever happens, whether I succeed or whether I fail, I just try to remind myself that whoever's messaging me or whoever's writing whatever on the internet, they don't know me, and they don't know my feet and what I'm capable of, and I don't even know what I'm capable of. So how on earth can a stranger know that? So I do think it just takes a little bit of repetition and reminding yourself that no one knows what you're capable of more than you do. And once you get that into your head, it can be a very powerful thing, even though it's scary.
So take us to the Shetland Islands. Take us to the start of this challenge. What was it like, and how was it going to work logistically? I believe you had your friend Barry. Was that right? I don't know if that's the right word.
I'll tell you all about Barry the bag. Well, the first thing is, I decided that one of the things I'm terrible at is asking for help. So on this challenge, I thought, what can I do to try and open up that side of me and force me to ask for help? And it was a very public adventure, very social media heavy anyway. But I thought, right, well, I don't want to have a support crew, because that changes the dynamic of the adventure for me. It's as much about making sure I chat to people and I'm kind of immersed in my beautiful country as it is about the run. So I thought, if I have a support crew, that kind of cuts me off from a lot of those interactions. So I came up with the idea that I would have a kit bag, which ended up as massive yellow kit bag called Barry Buttercup. We named him via social media. Everyone voted. And that Barry would get passed along like a giant baton as I ran, between the people I was staying with, between the girl guiding community, between runners that were coming out to join me. And so, the logistics of that was just next level as well. But it meant that sometimes Barry got in a bit of a fix and I'd have to parcel force him ahead for a week and then run with a few days worth of stuff on my back. But yeah, so me and Barry went up to the Shetland Islands. But I got to the end of my parents' driveway in southwest London, getting ready to go up to make the journey, basically a 2-day journey up to the Shetland Islands, because I was going by train and then on a plane. And I got to the end of my parents' driveway, and I had to stop and Google, do I need my passport for the Shetland Islands? And I felt so stupid, but I thought, well, actually, I don't know, because they used to belong to Norway. So they're in line with Norway, and they're also in line with Greenland. Like, that is how far north the Shetland Islands are. And so I Googled it and found I didn't, but I grabbed my passport anyway. And I knew it was going to be a different place, because a week before I'd left, I'd got put in touch with BBC Shetland wanting to do a piece on me. And I'd been full like London girl on the phone. I'd called them up and I'd said, oh, yeah, great. So could we schedule something in? I'm talking at a million miles an hour and I'm asking them about what they want to talk about. And then there was just this voice on the other end of the line that just went, oh, no. Where did I put that email? Oh, yes. Oh, okay, I'll get back to you on Wednesday about that, Anna. Lovely, take care now. And I was just like, right, I think the pace of life is going to be a bit more chilled in the Shetland Islands.
Oh my God, absolutely, absolutely. Starting the run, you're there in the Shetland Islands, barefoot, ready to crack on with these 2,352 miles. What are you feeling? What's going through your head?
Well, I think it helped, that it was somewhere so different that I'd never been before, because I don't know how many people listening have been to the Shetland Islands, but because it is still part of Britain, you're probably more likely to hop on a plane and go further afield than you are to go up there. But it is like the Caribbean crossed with the Scottish Highlands. Like, it is unbelievably beautiful. And also, while I was there were, Shetland ponies, which are so small anyway, but they were having foals. So these things were in the fields, which were like the size of a dog, but they were a horse, but they were dog size. Oh my gosh. So I think it helped that there was so much new stuff to kind of distract me from the start of the run. But the feeling of it, I was nervous, but I was so relieved to be there, because as is the case with any great plan you have in life, there are so many times where you could turn around and cancel it or back out because you feel so nervous that you're not going to be able to do it. And I was just so delighted that that hadn't happened and that I was there and I was going to start this thing. And goodness knows what was going to happen from that point on. But the main thing was that I was there and I was starting it. And the start was so funny. I was at the most northerly house in Britain, a place called Score, where there's just one house there and a beach. And there was just a crowd of about 6 people just, okay, here we go. And I'll do a big video, 2,600 miles in my bare feet. And then there's just a little patter of, whee, which was such a contrast to the end of the run where there were hundreds of people and press everywhere. So it was a beautiful way to start it.
I'd love to know more about the challenges that you had to face and overcome. Were there some which were expected? I mean, your feet, how did they cope with the surface? What would happen if you stepped on glass or cut your foot? So those obviously things are challenges that you probably thought about and processed and figured out how to deal with it. But were there any challenges that came up which you were like, whoa, did not expect this to happen?
I think the logistics was one challenge that I hadn't comprehended how exhausting that would be. And I'd done it all to myself, because so if you imagine like the Barefoot Britain cake, the layers of that cake were, there's Barry the bag that's got to get passed along. I was giving 3 to 5 girl guiding talks every week. So I had to make sure I was at a certain place at a certain time for them. And then also I had to have the energy once I'd run 20 odd miles in a day to go and chat to these girls, which was just a treat, of course. And sometimes it was 5 girls in a village hall, and other times it was 500 of them screaming in a theatre in Bath, which was just brilliant. So yeah, you've got Barry the bag, you've got girl guiding, I had open running stages. So I had 86 open running stages where local runners had signed up to come and run with me. And so you've got all that going on. And also I was making a documentary series on YouTube. So I was putting up little mini episodes on YouTube as I went along. And there was all of that going on. And thankfully I made the decision to actually, I hired a freelancer called Abby, who was amazing, she worked part-time and did as much of the logistics for me as she physically could. And so that was a huge relief. But still, even with someone helping me out, and she was based on a laptop in Cheltenham, it was still I woke up in the morning and it was just like switch on straight away. Ping, 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 ping. Okay, where have I got to be today? Who have I got to speak to? I need to text my host that I'm staying with tonight. I need to thank the one from last night. I need to do a social media post, all of that. So I think the logistics of it were way more of a challenge than I thought. And that just became relentless over 5.5 months. But that said, it was the only reason why the run was such a success and why it was so able to reach so many people and get so many people out running and get so many girls interested in adventure, was because of that level of challenge with what was going on. So yeah, it was definitely the logistics that were the biggest beast in the end.
Yeah. And you did suffer a little bit of a foot injury. I believe that you were like looking for a doctor who would like understand like, hey, I am actually an ultra runner doing this, not someone to sort of berate you and tell you that you can't carry on. Tell us more about, what happened there with that challenge.
I was in your neck of the woods, wasn't I, Sarah?
Yeah, very close.
It was so lovely when you sent me a message being like, you're probably okay, but if you need anyone, I'm here. I'm not too far away from you. It was lovely. So I'd made it about 1,000 miles, and I I casually say I'd made it 1,000 miles. I just want to be clear as well that I had a meltdown after 80 miles, and because my feet were so sore and it was so hard, and I thought, God, I just need to give up at this point. So I was breaking things down into a couple of 100-mile chunks. So I thought, okay, I just need to make it a couple more 100 miles. I just need to make it a couple more 100 miles. And then eventually I got to 1,000 miles, and everything just like got into sync. Like I was getting loads of media coverage. I've been in the Times. I was on ITV News. The logistics were slotting into place. We were like a well-oiled machine. My body had finally got used to, it was still hard, but running those distances every day. And then I picked up the tiniest little cut in, I was on the way into Sheffield actually, and it was fine for a couple of days. And it must have been maybe 2 millimeters in width, this little cut, but it went quite deep, and I think it was from just a piece of glass or something that I picked out straight away. But I'd had so many cuts before that I wasn't really worried about it. You know, I would have a bit of a sore foot, but then it'd take a few days or sometimes 10 days, but it would heal up and carry on and, you know, all that. But this one, basically one night, it just blew up like a balloon. And I remember just going to bed and thinking something about this feels really different. And my foot was just in waves of like pain. And I woke up the following morning and I was staying with a host, and their kid was saying, can we go and run around out the front? And I couldn't even put any weight on my foot. And at that point, it dawned on me that I had a foot infection. And so I went to the hospital because I was so embarrassed. So, of course, I got no support crew. Barry the bag's gone ahead. And I'm just stood there by the side of the street thinking, I can't run. I'm supposed to be running, but I can't run. So I went and got on a bus and went to the hospital. And at this point, I'm getting recognised as well because I got bright pink hair. So everyone's saying to me, oh, aren't you that barefoot runner? And I'm going, yeah. And they're like, what are you doing standing at the bus stop? And I'm thinking, oh, this is just so embarrassing. You can imagine. Like, I was thinking, God, don't like call up the press and be like, she's getting the bus the whole way. But I was like, I'll get to the hospital. My foot's messed up. And so I basically waited for ages in A&E, and then I was so embarrassed I didn't even want to tell the nurse what I was doing. So I kind of just said that I was running around and I had no shoes on and I'd stepped on a piece of glass and da-da-da-da. And then there was one point where I was in with a nurse and she was looking at my foot and she was deciding what to do with it. And she just looked at me, and you could tell, you know, I'm grubby. I'm wearing kit that I haven't washed. I've got no shoes on. I've got dirty feet. And she started asking me questions saying, are you from round here, Anna? And I said, oh, no, I'm kind of passing through. And she said, okay, do you have an address we can send something to? And I said, oh, no, not really. And then she just paused and looked at me and she said, are you homeless? I said, no, I'm not homeless. But I said, technically I am homeless. But I said, no, I'm doing a barefoot run, and I had to confess to her. But basically, after that, she effectively slapped a plaster on it and said, just rest up for a few days and I'm sure it'll be fine, which was not what I needed. So I put a tweet out and said, any doctors in the Stockport, Manchester area that are into running, can you help me out? And I got put in touch with this guy called Adam, who said, I can come and see you, Anna. I love what you're doing. I understand it. And I know that you need to get back out there as quick as you can. But I'm training for a 24-hour track marathon. So I've got to go and run 30 miles on a running track first, and then I'll come and see you. Which I just thought, yes, this is the man I need.
What a legend.
What a legend. Came and saw me, gave me took one look at my foot and said, that is infected, antibiotics. And basically I was off my foot for 2 weeks, but in that 2 weeks I had no idea whether I was going to be able to start running again or whether that was the end of my run at 1,000 miles. But gradually I managed to sit tight, heal my foot up and get back to just running 5 miles at a time, then back up to 6 miles, 10 miles, back up to 15. And I think it was about a month after that I managed to get back up to running my full mileage days. And I was just so relieved to be running again.
Gwyn Batten, a member of the Tough Girl Tribe, wants to know, has your gait changed? Like, have you had it tested? So just she almost wants to understand how wearing shoes has changed the way that humans do stuff.
I know Gwyn Batten. Do you know that? I know Gwyn Batten because she's a rower.
Yes, yeah.
Rowing stock. Yeah, absolutely. Love Gwyn. Love both of them. They're wonderful people. Has my gait changed? Yes. So I went and had some coaching. I'm not really, I mean, you probably get, I'm a bit slapdash. I'm not really one for worrying about technique and all that jazz. But I did think what I do need to do is minimise injury, because the most important thing is me getting to the end of this injury free, apart from my foot cut. And so I went and saw this guy called Christian, who I was going to say he lives under Kew Bridge, but that makes him sound like a troll. He doesn't. He's got a studio under Kew Bridge, and it's called the Running Lab. And basically, he puts you on this machine and looks at your gait, and you see yourself like a running skeleton. And over the course of a year, he gave me some exercises to try, and it's a bit like getting me to run like how a swan moves through water. And let's be clear that I'm not graceful like a swan. I run like a demented T-Rex with like weird T-Rex arms. But the idea is that you kind of shuffle and glide forwards, and you have a very quick cadence. And so you're not bounced. So imagine the way Mo Farah runs. He bounces up and down. Like there is so much bounce in that. But I was taught to run, and I naturally do run more like like you see a Japanese ultra runner, like very quick shuffles, just gliding along, minimal effort for maximum output for a distance. So I was coached over the course of a year to try and run in a style that put the least amount of loading through my hip and knee joints, and also in a way that would just minimize the risk of injury and conserve my energy, because I needed to do it day in, day out. So I was really grateful for that. And I was amazed to see, I watched the video of me at the start of that year and at the end of the year, and he looked at all the loading through my joints, and I'd nailed it. He basically said, your running technique now is you can't be in a better position to do this. If you get injured, that's what happens. But and the amazing thing is, thanks to that, other than I had one day off for a sore calf, but in 2,300 miles, I had no other days off for any muscular injuries, which just, I think, is a testament to how amazing the body is.
And I mean, a member of Tough Girl Tribe wants to know, Belinda Jane, when you are injured, what's almost your go-to exercise? I mean, when was the last time that you've been injured apart from your sore calf?
God, well, I've been injured loads since finishing the run. It's funny, isn't it? You go and run thousands of miles and don't have a problem because you're focused on looking after your body, and then you get back to normal life and everything suddenly hurts. I get I suffered a lot from shin splints. And I find that's just a lot to do with my tight calves. And what's my go-to thing? I actually do this thing called trigger point therapy. And I think this is the thing about injuries. I feel like there are 50 different ways you can treat an injury, everything from physio to chiropractors, to doing yoga and all of that, or more invasive stuff with like ultrasounds and all of that. But I think sometimes people, they try a few things and then they don't work. And so they say, well, that's it, I'm just injured. And I actually believe there will be something to solve your injury. It's just about finding what works for you. And I found in the past that I'm dreadful with physio, because I go to the physio and I say yes to all the things they say to me, and they all sound wonderful and make lots of sense. And then they give me exercises and I walk out with the full intention of doing my exercises and never do them. So I know physio didn't work for me. So I do this thing called trigger point therapy, which is, it's a little bit like, when you lie on a golf ball or a tennis ball and you release the muscle, but it's just a bit more extreme. So you kind of teach yourself to find where the trigger points are for certain muscles on your body. And when you feel a tightness or a pulling, or what it feels like it could be an injury, as long as you know what you're doing, you go, oh, okay, that part of my calf is sore, which means the release point is actually around the back of my knee. And you basically like jam your thumb, or I've got this wooden knobble thing, into the release point, and you know when you found it because it is excruciating and you kind of want to vomit, and your muscle starts to shake. But if you hold it, I find my muscle will release, and then it's normally sore because there's a bit of inflammation for a couple of days, but then the injury just disappears. And my boyfriend Jamie used the technique as he ran across America to keep him fit for 5,500 miles, and I used it for Barefoot Britain. And I find that works because it relies a lot on trusting that you know your body and learning as you go along as well. So it's an amazing woman called, I think she's like called Source Point Bodywork, an amazing woman called Sylvia, who was on hand on video from California if I got to a point where I had an injury that I wasn't sure how I could manage. And I'd say, Sylvia, I think my calf really hurts, but I'm not sure. I don't want to push on here if it's the wrong point. And she'd just send me a video and say, oh, hey, Anna, that's this release point here. What you need to do is take a fist and squeeze your muscle like a juice box. And it's going to hurt like heck, but don't worry, you're doing the right thing. And then it will disappear within 72 hours. And it worked every time. So, I'm not saying that's going to work for everyone, but for me, that's my go-to, because I found something that actually works.
Oh God, that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Now, a member of, quite a few members of the Tough Girl Tribe actually ended up running with you throughout Barefoot Britain. And Vicky Royal Johnson wants to know, she'd love to hear you talk about happiness in general. She ran with you during Barefoot Britain, and you were just so naturally happy, enjoying the little things and getting excited about stuff that other people wouldn't. You're basically not clouded by doom and gloom in the world. She goes on to say as well, I know that you get sad, but hearing you talk about how she gets out of that, and whether or not you embrace sadness for a while, then what would you do to get happy again?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually, because I do. I remember running with Vicky, and she had a tough girl buff on as well that day, which was brilliant. She was lovely, and I my default is to try and see the positive in things, and I think I get that from my mum. She's a very like practical, positive. Okay, here we go. Where's the silver lining? That said, you can't deny the fact that sometimes things are crap. There are days, there are bad things that happen, there are emotions you can't shove aside, and so sometimes you do need to just sit and be with your sadness. And I say this, me and Jamie, my boyfriend, some days he'll say to me, oh, it's been rumbling on for a few days and I'm just a bit miserable, and so I just turn to him and I say, oh, you be miserable. I mean, if you're going to be miserable, you just be miserable. Get the duvet out, look after yourself, just wallow in it, really embrace that misery. And then I find that brings you out of it faster. But I guess what Vicky said there about getting excited about the little things is I just try and connect and tap back into that little kid that lives within all of us, because kids have such a natural sense of awe and wonder about the world. They ask questions without worrying whether it's a silly question to ask or wondering why they want to know the answer. They just ask it because they think it just pops into their head. And so I try and take that approach, and I try and think, what would a kid think about this scenario? Or when I had people running with me, we always went and played on the kids' playground, because just that little shot of joy of doing something that's slightly uncomfortable and different, going on a swing or whatever, I think it just takes you back into the moment, and it stops you from worrying too much about what's going on beyond that moment. And I think the other thing is I realised on the run, when I would get sad or stressed or frustrated, what was actually bothering me wasn't what was happening in that moment. So say I'd come across a really dark patch of gravel and it was agony to go over, my brain would suddenly go, oh my gosh, you've hit gravel in the first 5 miles of this run. That means it's going to be gravel for the rest of the day. That means you've now still got 1,200 miles left to run of gravel, and you're going to be miserable for 5 months. And actually, if you stop that train of thought at, there's gravel beneath my feet right now, it might change in a mile or two, then suddenly actually you realize you're not worried about what's happening right now. You're actually worried about what you think might happen in the future, which goodness knows what's going to happen in the future. A pig could come flying by and wearing a unicorn mask, you never know. So, I think it's about trying to just work out, okay, what am I actually worried about and what is going on right this very second. And that helps you get back in the happy moment.
And I know one of the things that everyone will love, especially when the girl guides see you, is your amazing hair, because it is so pink. And Maddie Frankie wants to know is, how do you keep your hair so amazingly pink on adventures?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Oh, and that is an example of, I feel like I'm 35 now and I'm finally growing into my own skin. I've always wanted to dye my hair. I'd always wanted to cut it short for ages, and I finally did it a few years ago. I'd always wanted to get my nose pierced, and I did that recently. So my pink hair, again, that is another thing that I love it, because every time I look in the mirror, it just brings me joy. It just reminds me that you can't take life too seriously when you've got pink hair, can you really? And also kids love it because of their imagination. And I do say to them, they ask me why my hair's pink, and I say, oh, I was born with it pink. Were you not born with pink hair? And then they look confused, and then they might ask their mum and say, Mum, was I born with pink hair? And the mum goes, yeah, you were. It's brilliant. But how do I keep it pink on adventures? Oh, it is a nightmare, I'll tell you, absolute nightmare. So I basically had to try and get it done because I need it done about every 3 months. And I had to try and get it done. I think it got it done in Glasgow and Exeter, but it had to be done when I could be in the town 48 hours before I was leaving, because you have to go and have a patch test. This is it. But I just thought at one point I was thinking of just leaving it and letting it all grow out. But I realised that actually my levels of mojo were directly related to the amount of pink in my hair. And so I would just have to, on top of all the logistics, it was really important to me to go and get my hair re-pinked. And I never told the hairdresser what I was doing. I just sat there and just chatted about holidays and normal life and walked out the door again with bright pink hair. Very nice.
I love it. You know, I would have 100% thought that you were sort of like do it at home yourself, or Jamie will be helping to like shave, you know, like around the back, you know, keep it all neat and tidy around the back of your head.
Well, I think he's going to have to in the next few months. I think I'm about to buy a set of clippers, and I think I'm going to have to trust Jamie to cut my hair, which is just going to be an absolute act of trust. But yeah, do you know what? You actually can't get permanent pink hair dye. It's all semi-permanent, so that's why I had to go to salons. You know, just another boring fact for you there.
Good to know. So Louise Jarvis wants to know, you've been on so many big adventures with lots of time away from home, and she was wondering if you feel like you've made sacrifices in other areas of your life to achieve these big feats.
I guess the answer is yes, but equally sacrifice feels like a strange thing to say, because I'm so grateful for being able to do these adventures and I choose to do them. I guess what comes with that is the fact that I now make a living from doing adventures, or rather, I don't make a living from doing the adventures, but from writing and speaking about them. And with that comes a huge amount of hustle and anxiety. And I mean, what's happening at the moment, you know, effectively I run my own business, and in a flash, you know, 3 to 6 months worth of work just gone up in a puff of smoke. So there are sacrifices that happen with that. I think you can't have it all, and you give up, I guess, some stability in order to have the freedom to have these adventures. But I think it's about realizing what is more important to you, and where are you on that spectrum, that sliding scale of what you need to feel happy and comfortable, but yet what also makes you feel like you're alive. And I think for some people, it's a fantastic thing that they have a normal everyday job and they get their adventure in their weekends or in their holidays, because they enjoy having that stability, and that's really important to them to be happy. And then for other people, which are a bit more like me, the freedom element and the need for change and constant input and excitement, that is so much more important to me than feeling steady and safe and comfortable. And so therefore, because that's so important, I'm able to cope with the fact that I could turn around tomorrow and have no source of income. But I'm trying to find ways, and I have done over the last few years, to be a bit more stable with that. So I guess there are sacrifices, but it's just worth it. It's worth it. And yeah, I miss my parents and my family, and I miss my boyfriend, but I just feel like I'm just the best version of myself when I'm on an adventure. Just that freedom, and I just absolutely love it. I just feel like me.
I mean, I also remember when we chatted about your big Andes adventure, because you ended up missing out on your brother's wedding, and I think your mum was like the sense of reason, or basically sort of said, look, Anna, you want to go to South America, you want to get married, you don't need to fly back for it, you can just, you know, be there. And then your dad did a cardboard cutout of you for the wedding.
You got a great memory, Sarah. Yes, yeah, that all went down. Yeah, that's it at the end of the day. I think, you know, there's so many times when we do things because we're trying to make other people happy rather than ourselves happy. And that's not to say you shouldn't care about other people, but actually what ends up happening is if you do things for other people when they're not for yourself, then it actually just ends up falling down you like a ton of bricks anyway. Because, you know, if I'd have changed my plans and gone to my brother's wedding and really been resenting being there, you know, it'd probably have come out in some other way, and he'd have probably felt dreadful that I'd then changed my plans. And so actually, I think everyone should just do what they want to do, be happy, be open, be honest about it. And then as long as everyone's looking after themselves, and then once they've looked after themselves, they've got space to give energy to other people. So, I think that's definitely a philosophy in our family is do what you want to do what makes you happy, be kind, spread the love, but you've got to look after yourself and do what you need to do in life.
How is it working being in a relationship with Jamie? Because you're both full-time adventurers, and Jamie was off, you know, running around America, and you were off over in New Zealand, and then you're spending 5 months doing the Barefoot Run. How do you manage and balance your relationship? And is there the possibility of a joint adventure?
Oh, definitely. There is definitely going to be joint adventure. We've got adventure in our bones. It's not been the easiest of relationships, but I guess it comes back to that thing as well. Freedom and adventure is so important to both of us that we would never ask the other one to give it up. And we've continued to adventure separately because we have different whys. You know, mine is a lot about encouraging young people and women especially out into the outdoors. And I feel like if I had a boyfriend next to me in every adventure, unfortunately the way the world is, they just look at that and say, well, of course she's doing that, she's got a boyfriend next to her. So we choose to adventure separately, and he's got his amazing story about being really sick as a kid, and so he uses that to give back through his charity. We've just coped, I think. And you know what? Something that seems really daunting, like spending a year apart as he ran across America, actually just turned into the most awesome adventure. It was like the best of both, because I thought, well, Jay's away for a year. I don't need to be at home in the UK. So I buggered off to New Zealand for 5 months to go and write a book. And then I was nipping backwards and forwards to America to go and run with him every 2 to 3 months. I'd dress up as Wonder Woman and run marathons with him. And so then I was having my own little mini adventures in his adventures. So we just managed it and tried to, again, flip what might be a difficult situation into something that is an opportunity for us both to have new experiences. And we don't even FaceTime when we're apart. It's so weird. We just WhatsApp call. And that normally means that I can call him while he's running or while I'm running or I'm doing the dishes or something really boring. And we just get on with our daily lives and chat as if the person was sat next to us. So, it's been grand. The hardest yards, I think, are coming in the next year as we stay at home and try and have kids. And just go, I can already feel we're 4 months into normal life and I'm going, oh my gosh, I need to get outdoors and do something crazy. This is so boring. We've just had a sofa delivered and I've got a washing machine and oh my gosh, I'm feeling so normal. So I think the challenging times are in this next year until we work out how to mix normal life with smaller adventures.
So did you say you're having babies?
We were trying, yeah. I'm not up the duffer yet. I love it. I'm just telling everyone. Do you know why? Because I know so many women who have struggled to get pregnant, and I can understand why people don't talk about trying or whatever. But I feel like if we try and it doesn't work, I feel happy telling everyone because that needs to be shared as well, I feel. So I'm just telling everyone, yeah, that's our next adventure. So we'll see how that goes.
I love it, because when I hear that, I'm always like, oh, you're basically just saying, yeah, we're just having loads of sex.
That's it. Well, we've got to be indoors. We're quarantined.
You go. Well, do you know what? Good luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
He tells me he's got super sperm, so, we're all good.
And the baby's going to come out with pink hair.
Yes, I know.
This is sort of a bit of a segue, because you're probably not wanting to get your period at the moment while you're trying for a baby. But Rosie Watson, one of our tribe members, and I've just interviewed her for the Tough Girl podcast, actually. Rosie's running from the Lake District over to Mongolia, and she's currently actually in Kosovo, I think, paused on her journey due to the coronavirus. But she wants to ask the question, on your more sort of remote adventures, such as the New Zealand run, the Tiara run, how did you deal with your periods? This is obviously something that people don't talk about, and we should start the conversation. So as soon as we started the conversation about having babies, let's talk about periods as well.
Oh God, let's talk about periods, because not only is it about having your period, I think it's about acknowledging and the world realizing that your energy levels and everything changes in the course of a month thanks to our beautiful menstrual cycle. And I just think that's something that's not talked about, and especially if we are outdoors and it might be that in certain times in the cycle you're going to have loads of energy, and other times you're going to be really struggling out there on your adventure. So I think it's really important to learn about that, which we don't get taught about in schools. I feel like all we got taught about in schools was don't leave your tampon in too long, you'll get toxic shock, which just made me feel bloody terrified about using tampons. So how do I manage it? Well, in the past I've just used tampons, but I have started to try and transition to using a Mooncut or whatever. There's loads of other brands out there which are basically like a little silicone cup that you put up there, and then that catches everything. And it means that you're not producing waste, you're not putting things into the sewage system, it's reusable, and you don't need to rely on being able to get tampons wherever you are or sanitary pads. Mind blown. I think you've been to Bolivia. I couldn't get tampons in Bolivia. I had to get my mum to send them from the UK because they're not a tampon using country. So I think that's what I'm trying to do. I will be honest though, I've struggled a little bit with it, with the comfort of it and getting it right. And so I keep switching back. I keep going back to tampons and then going, come on, Anna, it's good for the environment, much better for adventuring, get to grips with the Moon Cup. And I keep trying again. And I've actually made a pact with my sister-in-law. We have made a Moon Cup pact. We've shook hands on it and everything. Period pact. Hashtag. That we're going to try and it's both switch to Moon Cups so that we can be better for the environment and better for ourselves, hopefully. But yeah, it also depends on how much your period affects you. I'm pretty lucky that I don't have particularly heavy periods, but I think it's just about being kind to yourself and rolling with how you feel.
I tried using Moon Cups on the Appalachian Trail, and the one thing that I sort of struggled with was like the hygiene of it all, because it's like trying to, I mean, not to get too graphic, but trying to like take it out to empty it, but having clean hands. And because I was going stoveless, I didn't have anything to boil it with, and then you're sort of putting it back up, and it's just like, and I wasn't, it wasn't easy to like wash, like you'll obviously use like your bit of, your water so you could like wash it out, but I couldn't really like sterilize it. And so I just found it a bit more of a nightmare from like a hygiene point of view. And therefore I ended up going back to Tampax because and then like, obviously carrying them out. But then like towards the end of the trip, my periods were so light, they were pretty much non-existent for the final bit.
I've not cracked that either. And I also don't know how it works where if you're in a public toilet where the sink is outside your toilet, like do you just like carry this
waddle out
bloody Moon Cup out and are like, hey, how's it going? Just gonna wash my cup, don't mind me. So I haven't quite worked that out yet. I've only ever used it at home, but I've always been nervous about taking it out when I'm out. So I bet there's some people in the tribe that have got this down, so I'm sure they can input on it and tell us what we're doing. But yeah, exactly, when you're on the Appalachian Trail, unless you're near a running river or something, then it is a bit of a tricky one. So I know there's a lot of people in a similar position to us that are kind of trying it out and want to do it but aren't quite sure the best way.
And just almost like transitioning back to your barefoot run experience, massive congratulations on finishing it. So you finished in London. Tell us a little bit more about getting to the finish and also how the transition back to normal life and physically and mentally, how that was for you.
Yeah, I think I was very much prepared for the post-adventure blues this time. I knew it was happening. I think I'm probably out of it now, which is about 4 months in. And I actually did something a bit mad in the last week of the adventure because I'd had to move, because of all the hold-ups with my foot and everything, I'd had to move my finish date a week back. And so I kind of had this extra week where I was on the schedule says I'm supposed to have arrived in London, but I didn't want to run around London because I thought probably glass everywhere and goodness knows what else. So I actually spent a week doing marathons on running tracks around London in that final week. And I know that sounds mad, but part of it was kind of a decompression chamber to come back to the real world, because I could run round and round and round those tracks with no shoes on and almost start to process the adventure and start to think about what had happened and just ease my mind back into sleep, sleeping back in the same bed every night and being back at home, but also, just still letting my body to move, because the hardest thing when I finished was actually this time around, normally it's the mental come down, but this time around, physically, the reaction from my body was just crazy. And I'm sure you had this when you finished like the Appalachian Trail as well. Your body is so used to moving for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, and then suddenly you're stationary and you should do a little bit of movement to sort of ease it back, but you can't be bothered because there's no point. I was like, what is the point in going running? I didn't have any motivation to go running. And so then I wouldn't do anything active. And it was almost like my skin was crawling, like my body was having this physical, my arms were tingling, my legs were tingling, very physical reaction to what I'd just done, and go and then suddenly stop. So I don't think that was the healthiest way to do it, but I couldn't have done it any differently. I could not physically convince myself to go for a run. I would start running and then I'd stop after about 5 minutes and I'd kind of come to and realize that I was walking and that I hadn't even realized I was walking, and my body just didn't want to run. So yeah, the physical come down was pretty tough this time, but the mental one, I think it just always helps just to keep an eye out for how you're feeling, and just check in every single day and know that every day is going to be different. And it is a strange thing, and it will take ages to process the adventure you've been on.
In the previous episode, we have talked a lot about sort of the financial aspects of, being your own boss. And did we call it like a jigsaw puzzle, or there was a specific word we used?
Yeah, jigsaw career.
That was it, a jigsaw career. One of those parts of your jigsaw is that you are a fantastic writer, and you've published amazing books. Two of my favorites are obviously like The Panther Perspective, about your run through New Zealand, and also 50 Shades of the USA, when you cycle 11,000 miles through every state of America, which I actually read when I was on my cycle journey down the west coast of America. So my question is how is your book writing coming along? I know you've got a new children's book coming out, but what's happening with the other books? Because I know you must be writing lots.
Yeah, so actually just today, before I came onto the call with you, I put out that the audiobook version of that, the Bike Ride Around America, has just come out, which is cool because that just means it opens it up to a whole other audience that won't sit still and read, of which I'm probably one of those people. So I've got a couple of audiobooks out now, which is great. And then my next book about South America, next adults book, is called Llama Drama. And that is coming out in hopefully in July. I'm trying to that was the original plan. I'm trying to still get it out at that point, even though there are some logistical challenges. One of which, for example, is that we need to shoot some llama legs for the front cover. And we'd booked in with some llamas to do the shoot. And we obviously can't now go and see the llamas. So, these are huge hurdles that need to be overcome for book publishing. So, but yeah, that one's coming out in July, called Llama Drama. And that'll eventually be on audiobook as well. And then, I guess it'll probably be out by the time this comes out. My kids' book is literally out just about now. And that has been a really interesting journey, because that's my first time that I've gone on a journey with a publisher rather than independently publish the book. And so there's having all these other people involved, and I've had to work with an amazing illustrator. She's just brilliant. She's so talented. And it's called 100 Adventures to Have Before You Grow Up, the kids' book, and it's aimed at 8 to 11-year-olds, but basically it's a book for adults as well. It's basically like a bucket list of books, of things to do. And I had so much fun writing that book, because a lot of the adventures I didn't have a huge amount of experience for, and they were actually things that I want to do before I still grow up. So, you've got horse riding in there, learn to ride a unicycle, rollerblading, sand surfing, visiting a lighthouse, building a den, all that stuff that kids can either do right away or do it as an aspirational thing once they can travel further afield. So I'm super stoked. It's going well. And basically the thing about writing books is you just got to keep your head down and keep cracking them out, even though it feels like you're not getting the rewards straight away. Because I wrote that kids' book nearly 2 years ago. I started writing it, and now it's coming out, and it feels it's just awesome. It's just a very proud moment to get to share adventure love with the world.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. And actually that leads into our final question from the tribe is Josephine Anslin wants to know, do you have any good tips and resources for self-publishing a book? So I suppose, what's your advice about self-publishing, which you did with your first couple of books?
Yeah, my advice for self-publishing is if you're going to self-publish, make it the best book you can. Have the standard that you would do if you were basically a publisher. So rather than seeing it as, I think there's the term self-publishing is what people understand it as, but it is more about just publishing independently, because when I self-publish a book, I write the book, and then it goes to the first structural editor. So that's phase 1. It then goes to a copy editor. That's phase 2. It then goes to a proofreader. And then alongside that, I've also got designers working on the covers of the book. And then they also format the book as well. You can have a separate formatter. And then, if you're going to do an audiobook, then you have to work with like a sound engineer on that side. So when you go with a publisher, the publisher will then pay for all of that, and they will use all their freelancers or their in-house people to do all of those things. So as an independent author, and if you're going to self-publish it, I would just say use as many of those people as you can. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people that independently publish make is they don't get an editor for their book. And even if you can't afford a copy editor or a proofreader, and you just get your friends to do all of the but they basically do all the grammar mistakes, all the spelling mistakes and the capital letters and the place names. But there is one thing that I would say, and that is invest in a structural editor. So someone who can take a step back, who's not emotionally invested in your book, who can take a view from the reader's perspective and say, does this make sense? How does the story flow? Do you need me to expand on more things? So there is a fantastic podcast actually called The Creative Pen. I would recommend anyone that wants to independently publish a book goes and listens to that podcast and goes through all the back. Obviously, when they've listened to all of yours though, Sarah, just saying.
Thank you.
But she is like a one-stop shop for anything you ever need to know about self-publishing. And I absolutely love it because I have complete control over my books. I've got control over the audio rights. If I want to run a marketing campaign, I can do it. And instead of with traditional publishing, you make about between 8 and 12% of every book sale. That's your royalty. With independent publishing, you make up to 70% of a book sale. So, which I'm sure you know a lot about this as well, Sarah. But so I love the freedom and the control. So if you're the kind of person that's got a short story you want to share with the world, and you're willing to roll your sleeves up and do some work and employ a freelancer to edit your book, then I would say absolutely do it, because we need more stories out there from women. 100%. There are not enough stories out there written by women.
Anna, it's been amazing to catch up with you. You are an absolute inspiration. But before we head off, 2 final things from you. One, where can people find more information out about you? Where can they follow along with you on social media, buy your books and all that good stuff?
All the good stuff is if you just go to annamcnuff.com, or you just follow me at Anna McNuff. My surname is McNuff. I'm the only Anna McNuff in the world. Follow me on there, and I'll put all my links to my books on my social media and on my website. You'll see all of that, or just Google my name and everything will pop up.
Fantastic. And Anna, final words of wisdom, final words of advice for the listeners of the Tough Girl podcast. What would you like to say to them?
I would say trust yourself. Realize that you know yourself better and your body better than anyone else in the world. So just trust yourself and go for it.
Tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Anna. What an absolute legend. It's always such a pleasure to catch up with Anna again. Everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com, so please do go and check it out. If this is the first episode of the Tough Girl podcast that you've listened to, thank you so much for tuning in. I didn't really introduce myself at the start, but my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast and the Tough Girl podcast Extra. Tough Girl podcast Extra, such as this episode, is when we go back and catch up with previous guests to see what they've been up to since we last spoke with them. The Tough Girl podcast Extra comes out on a Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time, and normal episodes come out on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. One of the things that I've been trying to do over the past couple of weeks is to really increase the amount of episodes that I'm putting out. So my goal is to get 2 episodes coming out per week. So Tough Girl Podcast on a Tuesday and the Tough Girl Podcast Extra on a Thursday. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the episodes. Over the past couple of weeks, I've caught up with Wendy Searle, who's an adventurer, mother of 4, and the 7th woman to ski solo and unsupported from Hercules Inlet to the South Pole. We caught up with Sarah Davis, also an adventurer who is who has just paddled the length of Australia's longest river, the Murray River, 2,500 kilometres. We spoke with Dr. Gait who has cycled the entire Nambian coastline, a 1,621 kilometre sand cycling expedition. And we also caught up with Jackie Hill Murphy, who shared more about her expedition to travel the length of the Amazon River and the Lost Inca Trail expedition. So more episodes are going to be coming out over the coming weeks. So please do make sure you subscribe. One of the reasons that I'm able to produce the Tough Girl Podcast Extra is due to the financial support of patrons. So if you'd like to find out more about supporting the Tough Girl Podcast and increasing the amount of female role models in the media, then please do go visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. From $2 or $5 a month, you can make a massive difference in this space. But wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, and go for it. All right, take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.